Take it away.
All right, thank you, and thank you to Fred, who is our MC, and I am your host. I am Bill DeWeese, and I'm going to turn off my camera now because you don't need to see my mug here for the rest of the evening. And welcome to this evening's webinar: 7 reasons why voiceover is today's best business opportunity. So thankful that you're here. And before we dive into the meat and potatoes of the program, I thought, for those of you who don't know me, and some of you guys have followed my YouTube channel for a while, you've been on my email list for a while, you've heard me speak before. I've got a feeling that there's a number of you who haven't. You may have no idea, why am I here to talk about voiceover? Just very briefly, my background, I worked in broadcasting for about 11 years, and then actually went into academia, became a college professor, where I did that for 14 years, and actually still have my hands on broadcasting because I was hired to manage a pretty large FM radio station owned by the university. And I was a professor, and I taught undergraduates in communications. And then in the evening, I taught working adults in the MBA program, where I taught marketing, management, and organizational behavior, and several other courses. But my real specialty was marketing. After that, went to work for a business consulting firm here in the Chicago area, and then for a corporate instructional design firm. So our job was to build high-performance learning environments for primarily Fortune 500 companies. But what happened is that company went out of business. And so I came into voiceover kicking and screaming. Now, not that I didn't want to do voiceover. I've been thinking about voiceover. I started thinking about it long ago, like in the 90s. But at that time, the way the business operated, it was an old business model, and you would require almost like if you want to be a songwriter, you have to move to Nashville and wait tables. Kind of the same thing with voiceover. You'd have to be available to go into your agent's office if you could get an agent to audition, and then if you got the job, you'd have to drive into the city to do the job. It's one of those things where you really couldn't hold a full-time job, at least have a career like I had and do that as well. So it just wasn't reasonable. But once, sometimes the worst things in our life end up being the best thing, and losing that job was the best thing that ever happened to me vocationally and career-wise, because when you have nothing to lose, it's like, let's do this. Let's do this thing. And I had a family, a wife, and 3 kids at home, and so I had bills to pay. And so, like I said, I kind of came into it kicking and screaming. And I was talking to my son about this earlier tonight, that it would end up being the best thing that ever happened to me. And I've learned a lot along the way. And I'm coming to you. I wanted to let you know that I'm coming to you not just as a voiceover talent, but as a former business consultant, somebody who understands business. And there are some real legitimate business reasons to work in the voiceover industry. And I really do believe that voiceover is today's best business industry for 7 reasons in particular. So let's get right into those. The first is, let's see here. There we go. Low upfront investment. So let's talk about that specifically. What you need. Here's what you need to get started. A quiet, well-treated space. When I say space, I mean it could be a closet. It could be the corner of a bedroom. I'm in my basement right now, and so it does need to be relatively quiet. It won't be soundproof. Nobody's home is soundproof. We all have dogs, cats, neighbors who mow their yards, snow blowers, planes flying over. We all have that to contend with. But when I say well-treated, I just mean acoustically well-treated, where you could use like moving blankets to put up around you, something to absorb the bouncing of the sound waves. Actually, a lot of people don't realize this. Your space is more important than your equipment. The first question you should ask yourself is not what microphone should I use? It's how do I treat my space? Far more important question than any equipment question will ever be. But you do need a microphone. I started off with a microphone. It's with a $50 microphone. It's called a Marshall MXL 2001. They don't even make that anymore, by the way, so don't go rush out to buy it. You could get something better for the same price now, I'm sure. But with that microphone, I used that for several years, and I built a 6-figure business with that microphone. So talk about low upfront investment. And then you need a computer with recording software. I literally, all in, no lie, $300. $300 when you calculate everything that I had, including it was like a $75 computer I bought used, a Windows desktop computer. And I created a 6-figure voiceover business with that. Now, later down the line, you can get into, your people will talk to you about pro demos and a website and what about this, that, and the other. Hey, later you can get a pro demo. You don't need one to get started. Later, you can set up a website. Do not need one to get started. Later, you can pay for online websites, what we call pay-to-play sites for online casting. You don't need to do that when you first get started. There are other ways to make money. Think about this. Here's the big business question. What is the return on investment? It's all about the ROI, which makes voiceover very appealing as compared to many traditional businesses and franchises. I was online reading just a few weeks ago about McDonald's. Do you have any idea what it cost to buy a McDonald's franchise? Now, obviously, there's a variation depending on where you're at and how big the operation, what the traffic is, that kind of thing. But it costs approximately $1 million to buy a McDonald's franchise. Do you know what you can expect as an owner to earn from that $1 million investment? Approximately $100,000 a year. So let me break this down. For me, to make what I make now in voiceover in McDonald's, I would need to invest between $3 and $4 million. If you remember a slide ago, I said I invested, what, $300. So when you talk about return on investment, and I'm not anti-franchise, I'm not anti-traditional business. It's just from a business perspective, you have to ask yourself, what are the associated costs? Whether it's owning a building or leasing a building, what's your overhead, your utilities? What about employees? I've got a good friend. He and his wife owned a number of Jimmy John's, and they recently sold them. And one of the reasons they talked about selling them was the frustration of, dealing with staff and
Hey, Bill,
employees.
what's a
Yeah.
Billy John for those who don't know?
I'm sorry, what's that again?
What's a Billy John for those who don't know?
Did I say Billy John?
Yes?
Jimmy John. Billy John is a concept I'm working on, but we'll get to that another time.
Tell people what a Jim, people don't know what a Jimmy John is either, some of them.
Oh, Jimmy John, it's a sub franchise. Their logo, or I'm sorry, their slogan is "Freaky Fast Delivery." You may have seen their ads. So it's a sub shop,
Mike
and
knows. Put freaky fast in the question marks.
freaky fast. And so, one thing, think about the worst case scenario. I mean, if you were to invest in a traditional business or franchise, you may be putting, what's the worst case scenario? You go out of business, you go belly up. Well, and you may lose tens, hundreds, thousands, maybe more dollars. Whereas in voiceover, with minimal investment, if you were to go belly up, which by the way, there's no reason for you to do that, once you understand how the business works, in terms of your potential loss, is you can't even compare the two. There simply is no comparison. Okay, that's the number one reason. The second reason is this: you get to work from home. Now, let me ask you this: when was the last time you couldn't do something because of your work schedule? How much time do you spend daily, weekly on your commute to and from work? How much gas do you have to purchase? How much does it cost you to drive your vehicle? And that's just gas. I mean, there's certainly vehicle costs that go along with that, driving back and forth to work. Where I live like an hour outside of Chicago. So, I know folks who commute into the city. And so when you're talking about traffic, you're talking, 2.5, maybe 3 hours of commute time. And when you get stuck in that drive time traffic, how much do you spend on clothing for work? Think about all, in addition to the other things like the freedom and the flexibility. One of the great things about working from home, in addition to saving a boatload of money, is I've been able to attend. Now my kids are grown. Now I have grandkids. I have been able to attend almost all of my grandkids' school functions since because I work at home, because I'm able to schedule myself as I please. I can slip away to play golf on occasion when I want to do that. If I want to go out to eat, I can, but I can eat out of the fridge and save a boatload of money as well. So there are some real advantages, financially, as well as time and, self-fulfillment, the things that you want to do from working from home. And that's something you can't even put a price tag on, really. Or number three, the business is completely portable. Maybe you don't want to work from home. Maybe you want to work on the road. Would you like to work while traveling, or at least have the option to go on vacation and work? Instead of the traditional 1 week, 2 week vacation, what if you took 4 or 5 vacations, but you didn't have to miss work because you could take work with you? My wife and I we purchased a vacation home condo in Hilton Head, South Carolina last year, which is one of the benefits of, of being a voiceover guy and making more money than I used to make. And we rent it out when we're not there. But when I go there, I can work. As a matter of fact, if you haven't seen it yet, if you get a chance, just search my name on YouTube and you'll find one of my most recent videos is a video I took while in the condo. I set up a portable studio. And let me just explain to you what this looked like, because I think hopefully you'll find this inspiring. And if you're resourceful, it's amazing what you can do. I set up a studio. It's a 2-bedroom condo, so I set it up in the spare bedroom. Although I could have done it in the main bedroom as well, because I work when we're not sleeping. I took 4 couch pillows and I made basically a cube on top of a card table. So 2 sides, a back, and a top. And I recorded within that couch cushion cube. I put my microphone in there and, ran cables out to my little notebook computer. And I did my full workload while down there recently. We went down for a week and I just did all the jobs that came in while I was there. And here's the punchline is I never had one client who complained or said they could tell any difference in my audio. So when you do it right, it can be a completely portable job. And how awesome is that? I look forward to, as time goes by and I'm now, I just recently turned 60 and not that I'm looking to retire, but I want to spend more time, my wife and I doing the things that we want to do. And part of that is I can take my microphone on the road and I can work while on the road. Here's another benefit that has been absolutely amazing for us. And that is the involvement of my family. This never even crossed my mind when I got involved in voiceover. And, if you don't have a family yet, you don't have a spouse or partner or kids, maybe this doesn't apply to you now, but it certainly could at some point down the road. And if you do, this has really been one of the most gratifying things about my job. And so what's happened, I've been able to essentially hire almost all of my family members. Actually, I only have one son that's not working for me. I've got 2 sons and a daughter, but my youngest son, Alex, actually began editing audio for me back when he was in high school. And now he's an audio engineer and helps and works with my students in creating really top-notch home audio. But he started doing that then. Mallory, my daughter, who's my oldest child, went to work for me about 10 years ago and works for me as a full-time assistant. And which means she edits audio for me. She organizes I do about anywhere from 5 to 7, sometimes 8 or more jobs a day. And so she organizes all of that, stays in contact with the clients, lets them know what's going on. And she also handles all billing and just anything that goes along with office work. And there's a lot of details that go along with it. She handles all of that. And now my wife, Vicky, actually works in the office and she is customer service for people who are in my Voiceover Blueprint training program, which I'll talk more about in a bit. But it's not just involving the family, it's the legacy. It's of my children learning something that they can use, regardless of what they choose to do for a living. They may or may not want to do this as a full-time living, as life goes on. But if they're ever in a situation where they need to work or they need to earn income, they know how to do it. This is a skill. This is something that's been passed on to them. This will be a legacy of sorts that I can pass and give to them, which gives me a lot of peace of mind. And so hopefully that, again, if you have a family, that will make sense to you. But maybe at some point, this will make a little more sense to you. But it's something worth thinking about, because how many of you have a job where you can actually involve your family and create that kind of legacy? Usually not in a traditional job. Another thing that I really love about voiceover is there is no sales. Let me explain. And I understand what sales. I've done sales jobs. I mean, one of the things I did to help put myself through school and college is I sold books door to door. That's the hard. I mean, voiceover, that's a cakewalk compared to that. That by far is the hardest job I've done. But I've had a number of sales jobs, along the way, and I won't say that I like them. I do not. I'm an introvert by nature. I don't like going out and, and having to create that kind of connection with somebody and then build rapport and trust. And that is not my comfort zone. And one of the things with voiceover, we're certainly selling a product. Don't get me wrong. Voiceover, it's our voice. But the way we go about doing it is not by selling it. It's no sales, but it's a lot of marketing. Now, let me explain. There's a difference between sales and marketing. Think of it this way. Sales is a push strategy where we're kind of taking our stuff and we're pushing it out there and trying to get other people to buy into it. Marketing is a pull strategy where we're dangling bait. Think of it like fishing. And when we have the right bait, usually that would be things like auditions and demos, and we put that in the right place where the right people are at, we're going to get bites. We're going to get interest. Marketing is fun. Now, for some people, sales is fun. I think it's probably a minority of people. For me, marketing is a blast. There are very few things more rewarding than understanding who your audience is and putting yourself in front of them in such a way that you create interest in what you do. And, if you're an introvert like me by nature, sales can be very tough. But the good news is this: anyone can learn to be a good marketer. And that's one of the things my students learn, how to be good marketers. And they don't have to be great voices. They really don't. But you have to learn to be a good marketer. And it's not extremely difficult to do. Number 6. Have you ever become frustrated in your job or in your life because you just don't feel that it provides a creative outlet? I don't know how many times I hear this from people. I've been doing this job, maybe working in an office setting, an accountant, or I've done this, that, or the other, whatever it is. And they know that they've done it so long, they know the job inside and out, and it really requires little to no creativity on their part. And they're just dying to use their creative muscles. Many are people who love to speak. Many are people who like to perform publicly. I work with actors, broadcasters, musicians, not exclusively by any means. But a lot of these folks, these are people who want a chance to express themselves creatively. Does that connect with you? Well, people who have an outlet to do what they love to do are they're essentially happier. They make better parents, better partners, better friends, better children, better people. And voiceover, from a creativity standpoint, has made me a very, very happy person. And if you feel that urge to do something where you're expressing that creative gene, that creative muscle, I think you'll find to be voiceover an ideal platform in which to do that.
Hey, Bill, I don't know if you're going to cover this, but you might want to just go through and give people kind of a laundry list of some of the people that we have that we work with and what their professional backgrounds were.
Oh yeah! Oh my goodness! There's so many. Well, just today I was doing a training session with our coaching group, and one of the people we interacted with quite a bit. Her name is Adrienne. She's actually a former news anchor in Nashville. So we also were talking to an opera singer, Keith, who he sings at the New York, for the New York Metropolitan Opera. So we've got performers, in that sense, opera singer. A lot of broadcast, radio and television. Lots of teachers
and
pastors.
Yeah.
A number of pastors, salespeople, marketers, and then the list could go on.
Yeah, it's all over. Yep.
Yeah. We've got one who I think was a cable TV installer. You've got everything. And that brings us to number 7. Building a lifestyle. I'll be honest with you, when I was younger, I didn't think a lot about my job as it related to lifestyle. I worked. That's what I did. I knew that's what I needed to do to support my family. And I really didn't give much thought to lifestyle as my work integrated into it, because there really wasn't much of one, to be honest. But it would be nice, would it not, if you could build a life around your business as opposed to a business around your life. And I think you just have to take some time to ask yourself, what is it you want to do with your life? What is it you want to accomplish with your life? Where do you want to go? I know this is something that I've given a lot of thought to, and it's something I think, even at my age now, and I'm still thinking about what I want to do. And one of the things, I'll just give you, for instance, it may sound kind of goofy, I love to run. And my daughter and I, because she works with me and we're able to work the same schedule, we've started running about 3 times a week. And the plan is we want to run a marathon in several months, like, probably something down south in the wintertime. And I have run the Chicago Marathon a couple of times, but we're talking 20, 25 years ago. So this is it's just one example, but the business operates around my life and my lifestyle and my family. And as I mentioned earlier, I want to spend more time, doing things with my wife and traveling and creating experiences.
Speaking
And
Speaking, Bill, of a lifestyle, I'm sure that some people are wondering, okay, well, how much are you making as a result of this business now? And what do people who are just starting out and how quickly can they get to where they might want to go? That might be important, I think.
yeah, and it's a fair question. I think if you're ever going to work with a voiceover coach, I think one of the first things you should ask them is how much they make, because you want to know they can do what they say they can teach you to do. I mean, I think that only makes sense, right? I This year I'll make almost $400,000. Last year I made 350,000. This year I'm on track to do more than that. So, somewhere between 350 and 400, $1,000. I've got students who make multiple six figures down to, like, for instance, Keith that we were talking to earlier today. He's a full-time opera singer. For him, he's not interested in being a full-time voice guy. Now, the last I heard, and Fred, correct me if I'm wrong, I think he's making about $60,000 a year just from
Yeah, I think it was
voiceover.
20,000 last year and then about that this year. But again, people can work this business full time, they can make it part time. And the idea though, but again, just so we are painting the picture fairly here, you're not going to make $400,000 next year if you get started in all likelihood.
No, right. I've
Yeah.
done this for 13 years, so now I did get up to six figures really fast. So, I mean, you can build it quicker, but, to get from there to, from the 100,000 to 400,000, that's taken a number of years, you know, of cultivating clients and such. My daughter, Mallory, she works for me full time, but she records voiceovers on the side. And I mean, she'll be making tens of thousands this year on a part-time basis, voiceover on top of her full-time income.
Beautiful.
So, yeah, I mean, it's a way to build a lifestyle. And then I'm going to give you a bonus reason. As I thought about it, I thought I should share this with you too. So I said 7 reasons, but there's a bonus eighth reason. So this is just kind of the cherry on top of the sundae. Because one of the things you're probably asking yourself is, okay, can I really do this? Do I have the quote unquote voice for this? Do I have the quote unquote talent to do this? Well, here's the good news. And I know this because I do this every day. I get requests for auditions and I see communication from clients regarding projects every day, lots of them. Clients are looking for ordinary people. The idea of the big, bold, male voice is what you used to have to be. That is the exception, not the rule. I'm not saying it never happens. Obviously, on occasion it does. You see it on television, and usually when that happens, it's done tongue in cheek, because now it's looked at more as a joke than being taken seriously. What clients are looking for, they're looking for real men and women. And when I say real, what I mean is genuine, authentic, being you, expressing your personality, your point of view. And here's the good news: you qualify for that. I do too. We all do. I mean, that's the awesome thing about voiceover. Now, I'm not saying you don't need to learn some performance skills, but those performance skills revolve around learning how to be you, believe it or not. The thing, I mean, you think that, oh, wow, I'm already me. Yes, you are. But learning how to be you behind a microphone is what I help people do.
Hey,
That's,
quickly, we got to jump in with Randy's question here because
yeah.
this is one we know that people are asking. And I know the answer, but I'm going to ask it to you as if I don't. Is the $400,000 all from VO, or does that include the coaching you do?
That's all VO. That's no coaching. That's all VO. That's a good question. And that should be the second question people ask me. Well, where does that income come from? Because I could fudge, I'm not fudging the numbers. And I've got the documentation from my accountant that I can share with you and show you to verify that. So thanks
Beautiful.
for asking that question, Randy. I appreciate it. You know, had I been born 20, 30, 40 years ago, earlier than I was, this would be a much tough, well, for one thing, I probably wouldn't be around. If I was born 40 years earlier than I was, that'd make me 100 years old. But anyhow, it would be a much tougher business because they were only looking for the the big, bold, deep voice for one thing. And from a technology standpoint, again, today we audition from home. We record from home. We don't have to travel into studios. It just made it very cumbersome and
And Bill,
difficult to do as a career. Yeah.
and as you talk about that, I'm reminded somebody asked a question a little bit earlier I couldn't get to yet, obviously, is having to do with can you do this anywhere? And this is, I mean, it's a great example of how technology has changed. Not only can you do it anywhere, you can do it everywhere, right?
Literally, as long as you need to have a internet connection of some sort where you can receive and receive scripts from clients and communicate with them. But even that doesn't have to be like super high speed. I mean, because that's the way we communicate with clients and send audio files and such. But I mean, if you can get that, yeah, you're good. I literally, for some of you, this may not make sense, but for those of you who've been around for a while, you may have heard there's a technology called Source Connect. It's a software program that allows us to patch in essentially to any studio in the world where basically they record your voice in their studio, even though you're behind your microphone at home. My internet service was down, and I did it with a connection. I used my telephone as a hotspot, and I did a recording session with a studio. That boggles my mind. I mean, with a telephone hotspot of all things, technology is it's a beautiful thing. Now, I've given you the 8 reasons, 7 plus bonus reason 8 to, business reasons, the business case for creating a voiceover career. Now, certainly there's some things you need to learn. There's some challenges. You don't just say, hey, I think I'll be a voiceover talent today. Obviously, I don't care what you do. There are things you need to learn. You need to learn to manage. And some of the challenges of becoming a voiceover talent is, number one, learning to manage yourself. What do I mean by that? Well, many of us have spent our lives being employees. And so we understand what it means to be managed by someone else. But when you work for yourself, essentially, when you're self-employed, learning how to manage yourself is a real thing. Learning how to take self-responsibility for everything that happens. You can't point the finger at anybody else. It's all on you. And learning how to manage your time, how to manage your work, how to manage your emotions. Because, those of us who are performers, we need to be told oftentimes how awesome we are. But when we work alone, we don't always get that kind of feedback. And so learning to manage yourself is important. And of course, that's something I work with my students on. Managing your mindset, it closely ties into that. Because when you work by yourself, you have to, working isolated is a little bit of a different mindset. It's a different dynamic than working with a team and with other people. And so learning how to manage that is something, you can learn. Certainly the marketing skills. As I said, anybody can learn marketing skills, but that's one of the things you do have to learn to be successful in voiceover. And what to do behind a microphone. Again, not to learn to be the big golden throat, deep voiced announcer, but how to become and how to be yourself behind the microphone. Well, the solution to these challenges is a program that I have put together called the Voiceover Blueprint 2.0. This is
And by
the
the way,
latest. Yes.
don't anybody go away. We're going to have time for questions here, but Bill will tell you a little bit about the blueprint here.
Yeah, oh, thank you. And I'll just take a moment to do this, by the way. I just want to touch on some high points, and then I thank you for mentioning that, Fred. We'll get to your questions. The components of the Voiceover Blueprint. It's over 70 hours of training in streaming audio video format online, where you have indefinite access covering anything and everything from setting up your studio, editing audio, to marketing, to how to direct yourself from home, how to manage your office, and on and on and on it goes. So it's basically, a student of mine said it's like a university level training for voiceover. It's like everything. When you go through, when you're in this program, you learn everything from A to Z. The other part of it, every week we have 3 to 5 live coaching webinars that you can be involved in, where you can ask questions. And where, like today, I had students reading and giving them feedback and coaching, and you have 1 year access to that. And then the third part is access to my closed Facebook group. And the couple benefits from that, you're with your peers and you have a chance to interact, and it's fun to watch people interact with each other and how they help each other along the way. And obviously I'm a part of that discussion. Fred's a part of that discussion. But it's fun to watch, as peers help each other. But I also stream live as I work. And as I mentioned, I work quite a bit. I stay very busy. As I work, I stream live from my studio. I turn on the camera. Let me do that again just for effect. I turn on the camera, you hear the audio, you see my desktop, and I pull up the script and I get to work. So you get to watch me record jobs, auditions, edit audio, correspond, with clients, write proposals, all the stuff that goes with day-to-day voiceover work, which is
Hey,
infinitely
quick
valuable.
question, Bill.
Yeah,
How many other voiceover coaches allow you to see them work every day?
I'm not aware of anybody who
I'm
does
not.
that. And I think I think it's something that's been sorely missing because I can tell you what to do, and that's important. You need to be told, what to do, and I can help you and give you feedback. I certainly need to do that. But to be able to sit down virtually beside me as I work so you can see how I do it, that takes this to a whole other level. Okay, so that brings us to, is this for you? Well, it is if you understand this will take some time to build your business. If you're highly motivated, if you're a go-getter, you're self-motivated. You don't need to have somebody else tell you to do it. You're willing to do it yourself. You understand that this is more about tenacity than talent, and I mean that sincerely. This is far more about tenacity than it is talent, and I've got students to testify to that fact. If you love being in a creative business, if you hate working for someone else, or you're just tired of the same old, and you like the idea of working at home, but it's not for you if you're not willing to work hard and follow a program, this is not for you. It's not for you if you're the kind of person who is not self-motivated, not at all. If you're expecting to make your money back overnight, definitely not for you. And if you're not willing to follow instructions or get coaching, then you just need to go figure it out for yourself because this is definitely not for you. So the decision is yours on that, and you would love to see if you qualify. I mean, if this strikes a chord with you and you say, "Yeah, I think I'd like to do it," well, let's talk about it. And I've given you a URL you can go to. It's 3fred.com, www.3fred.com. And what you'll do when you do that, two things, and these are both very important. You will actually schedule a time online, but as important is you need to fill out an application because there are some things we need to know about you before we talk that are very important. So without the application, we don't schedule the time, don't have the phone call. So Fred, if I'm missing anything there, let me know. But otherwise, I'm glad to take on questions.
That's pretty perfect. And what I want to do with these questions, Bill, I want to try and get as many answers as we can. So give short, pithy answers if at all possible, because I
I'm all
want.
about short and pithy.
Okay, so here's a couple of them. How important is social media to you making money as a voiceover artist?
It's not at all to me. Now, I know people who do use social media. I don't think it's the most effective way. And so therefore, I don't use social media. There are ways that are much more efficient and effective, in my opinion. Those are what I practice and those are what I teach.
Okay, what about agents? How important are agents? And I mean, we hear all the time that in most professional jobs that involve performance, agents are crucial. What about here?
I've got about 14 agents. I signed with my first one 12 years ago. I haven't booked a single job with them. Um, and a number of others I haven't either. Some of the others I have booked, quite a bit of work. But here's the number you need to remember. Less than 1/2 of 1% of my income comes through agents. Agents
And,
are a non-issue. They're not
and the
important.
system that you teach doesn't revolve around agents.
It does not. You can certainly use them, but don't expect, there are very few people that can build a career with an agent. Very few. And no agent has an interest in building your career. They are there to book talent. They don't care if it's you or somebody else. I'm not saying that makes them bad, not at all. I'm just saying they're not here to build your career.
Okay, so Matt, our buddy from Amsterdam, is asking whether or not this info applies for people who are overseas, not in the United States.
Yes, it does. We've got a number of students that are overseas. And the great thing about today, it's very much a global market. I would say 25% or more of my work is done for clients in Europe. And there's a big appeal to using dialects and accents that are not from your home country. So it's very appealing for North Americans to use people in Europe or Australia or someplace that's not North American and vice versa. And plus there's demand, especially when you get into training and corporate, there's demand for multiple languages and accents. So it's a good time to do this regardless of where you're from.
Yeah, Dave originally asked a question of thinking this was not being hosted by Mr. Luis when I first came on. So yes, you've had Bill for the full time here. Let's see, is this a live session? God, I hope so. What
It
is
is
today?
live.
What's today's date, Bill?
Today is June the 26th. It is 7:35 p.m. Central Time.
Okay. Where do you find, and again, keep your answers pithy here. Good place to find scripts. How do you do that?
You know what I do? This is easy. You just simply go to YouTube or ispot.tv. Take a commercial that exists and transcribe it. Don't use these phony commercials that you find online because they sound phony. They're not written by professional copywriters. Use something already in existence. Way better route to go.
And I think I know the answer to this, but I'll try and let you answer it because I always feel compelled since I know the answer. But what about audio interfaces? What about the fact that you now have USB mics that are under $50 that are amazing that don't require an audio interface? What do you feel about those?
Yeah, there's some great USB mics that are great to start with. I wouldn't have said that 3 years ago, but today there are a lot of good microphones, and USB is a great way to start.
Okay. Do I need to be in this? I think we answered it, but I'll go right through it because someone asked it. Do I need to be in a geographic market specifically for, say, character voice work?
Now, that might be the only exception to everything I'm talking about. I mean, I do some character voice work. I do some video games and such, and you can certainly get character voice work wherever you live. But if you want to, like, if your goal is to do a Disney movie or to do a Pixar movie, you need to move to Los Angeles. It's way more competitive, and it's a much longer career track.
However, the end of his question brings up another important one, which is he says, this is definitely my niche. Have we heard that before?
Yeah, we have. I always say, don't be too careful. Don't be too quick to decide what your niche is, because the reality is you don't know what it is until the market tells you what it is. It takes time to figure. I didn't know what mine was, and I guarantee you, and maybe yours is voice, but you won't know that until you audition a bunch of times and you put yourself out there. Then you'll find out what you're truly good at and what clients like you for.
And it's surprising sometimes people who go in thinking they're going to end up doing one thing end up doing something completely different, right, Bill?
Absolutely.
Okay. I've heard this one a lot of times, Bill. You need to answer it. I hear that the voiceover market is being saturated. How true is that?
Well, yeah, sure. There are more people doing it today than ever have been, but by the same token, there's way more content to be recorded than there ever has been. There's still plenty of room for you. Here's the thing. Media is so cheap and easy to create. I mean, look at YouTube, for goodness sakes. There is so much video content being created that we will never oversaturate the market. So you have nothing to worry about in that regard.
Boy, you got Mike worried. He's asking, do you work 7 days a week? Hardly.
No, 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 no. I don't work weekends. I mean, I do occasion if I've got a really good client that needs something in a hurry. Sometimes I'll agree to work over the weekend. I usually take the weekends off, and I work about 5 to 6 hours a day recording voiceovers.
Patrick is bringing up the fact that you mentioned that a demo and a website don't need to be done right away. They can be done later.
Yeah.
Define later.
Well, okay, here's the thing. When you begin to direct market yourself to companies, when you decide you want to get an agent, when you want to compete on these pay-to-play sites like voices.com, you need a pro demo at that point. And at that point, you need a website as well. But when you're first getting started, there are some wonderful like freelance websites, which I recommend that you start with, and acx.com, where you can start doing audiobooks, in which you do not need a website, and you can make some really great money before you move on to the more competitive end of the pool.
I love cynics like Jeff who says, out of curiosity, which pays better, VO work or coaching?
VO. Good question, though.
Yeah. Good resource to find auditions. And why don't you talk about the whole idea of these sites that are pay to play as opposed to freelance sites?
Yeah, well, when you're first getting started, I would definitely say get on the freelance side. Like, for instance, Fiverr has invested a ton of money in driving traffic there. My daughter is going to make about $20,000 just off Fiverr this year, just off Fiverr part-time. I've got students who make well over six figures just off of Fiverr. I'm sorry, what was the question again, Fred?
I'm just telling you, I mean, again, comparing the free sites
Oh,
like
to pay to play. Right, 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 right. Yeah, and then I get most of my new jobs from the pay to play sites, but you shouldn't jump into the deep end of the pool until you've got pro demos, you've got some experience, and your auditioning skills are really sharp, and you understand the platforms, because you definitely need to understand how the platform works. Most people don't.
you got it. And in response to Rafiq's question about business licensing and taxes, Rafiq, We do not, we're not accountants, nor do we play them on TV. Ask your own trained professional about that.
Yeah, it could be different for depending on where you live and other variables.
What about your own health insurance? I mean, I got to pay for mine. You got to pay for yours, right, Bill?
Yep. Yep, that's right. And unless you have a spouse that has a job with benefits, otherwise, yeah, you got to look into that.
Myrna's asking if you think $2,000 a month is a realistic goal for someone starting in the business, and if yes, how long do you think it'd take to get there?
2,000 a month?
Yeah.
I'd think within the 4 to 6 months.
Yep. Which states do you have agent representation, and why those states? Agents are across states and across countries, right, Bill?
When you have a good demo, yeah, it's one of the easiest things to do. I've got, oh my gosh, New York, Los Angeles, Ohio, Dallas, Kansas City, oh my gosh, did I say Chicago? And I can't even remember. And then in Europe, a couple over there. So all over the place.
Okay, Chris is asking, he's been told for 20 years he has a voice for voiceover. Why don't you tell the story about the one gentleman who we were surprised by, who we actually were reluctant to sell the program to?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I've got a student. It was the first time that I really worked with somebody. I thought, I don't know that I'm not sure I should take this guy's money because I wasn't 100% sure that he had what it took. And I remember even having this conversation with my daughter, asking her opinion, like, what do you think? And we thought, I don't, let's see what happens. Well, the guy contacts me back a few months later. He was doing so spectacularly well that he had to hire a full-time assistant to help manage his office because he was doing so well, booking so much
what would
work.
you say to that? What would you say about our ability to spot talent then, Bill?
Not so good. And what the thing was, it had nothing to do with his talent. I mean, he was good enough. It really speaks to the idea you don't have to have a great voice, but you have to learn to be a good marketer. That's what's important here.
Yeah, and again, is the content that people see on YouTube the same thing as in the blueprint?
No, no. Well, what you're seeing on YouTube, you're seeing bite-sized chunks of this, that, and the other. Well, it's like little leaflets of information. The blueprint is basically going to school. These are full courses. Plus, you're doing the live interaction. You've got the multiple times per week where you have coaching sessions to interact.
In answer to David's question, Bill and I are partners on the training side of his business. That's my whole background. So I help him make and run that. We've been together for almost 9 years.
It takes way more than one person to run this operation.
Yeah. Okay, Randy's asking about the competition. Is the competition tough? And if so, how does that affect things?
Well, yes and no. And yes, meaning there's a lot of people out there. There's a lot of people out there that are far more talented than I am, in my humble opinion. I mean, I'm not trying to be, I know I'm good at what I do. I've worked really hard at it. There's always somebody who's going to be better than you. But that's not it took me a while to figure this out. That's not the point. The point is, can you be good at being you? Because if you can be yourself, that makes you unique from anybody else. You're not just another voice in the crowd. You are you. And believe it or not, the authenticity is extremely appealing to clients. So that's the question.
Yeah, and I think this dovetails right along with it. Good question from Benjamin. What's the hardest part of this business?
I think the hardest part is, early on, you've got to do some work to gain some momentum, to get some traction. I think the hardest part is getting to the first job because you're going to doubt yourself every day. You're going to think, am I really good enough to do this? Because you don't, in your mind, I know you're good enough, but you don't know you're good enough yet. And once you get that first job, whether it takes a week or whether it takes a month, once you have that first job, you realize, okay, if one person is willing to hire me, I bet there's 2 people willing to hire me, and so on and so forth. How do I know that? Because that's the process I went through.
Got it. It's a bunch of questions again on pay to play stuff. And again, we should go back to this issue Brian is asking about. How does one identify and subsequently narrow down your focus from many genres and types of VO? Basically, what about niching? And we talked about that a little bit earlier. What do you say to that, Bill?
You don't niche. You let your clients niche you. You should be very broad. You should audition for audiobooks, for corporate work, narration, documentaries, commercials. Be as broad as you can. Allow the market, i.e. clients, to tell you what they like you for. I've done this for 13 years. I still cast a very broad net. Over time, I realize I tend to get hired more for corporate work. I do a lot of healthcare and hospital commercials. I do a lot of financial institutions. If I have a niche or niche, that would be it. But I don't market myself focused solely that way, but that's where I tend to get most of my clients.
Okay, so the question is what you have up on the screen there, and people get and have a conversation with me if they go to 3fred.com. Somebody is asking, is this an automatic approval if I come and talk to Fred?
No, no. Nope. We need all those things we talked about before. Who's it good for? Who's it not good for? We need to make sure that this is good for you and that you're ready and prepared to do this.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we don't take this lightly. We put a lot into this.
Yeah, we don't want to take your money if you don't have what it takes. And again, that doesn't relate to vocal ability as much as it does to tenacity. So
Right.
John is asking, now here, I always like to have you tell the story this way as it relates to startup costs. So if you took those pillows, which I believe was from a couch that was it already sitting in your Hilton Head.
Yeah, and we inherited it when we bought the condo. Yeah.
Okay, so you had the cushions that were free, and if you get a $50 mic, a fee fine mic on Amazon, and don't worry about that name, but it's a fee fine case 670, I think. It's under $50 on Amazon with a bunch of couch cushion pillows from the Salvation Army, the fee fine mic. Could you build a $100,000 business?
Oh, no doubt. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Knowing what I know now, yeah, no problem.
Yeah. How can I do this when I'm working another job? Kim asks.
Well, like you would any other part-time job. I mean, you really have to block out your time. You have to manage your time and say, I'm willing. How much are you willing to commit time-wise? You don't have to work it as a second full-time job. I've known people who have done that because that's how desperate they were to turn it into something significant. But it might be maybe you can put a half hour or an hour in the evening. The main thing is being consistent with that because once clients begin hiring you, they will want to have their work turned around to them, usually within 24 to 48 hours. So being consistent is extremely important.
So John's asking about the fact he does accents real well. How much will that help him?
Well, it's less important than it used to be because it's so easy to. If I need somebody, for instance, with a German accent, I can go online and find somebody who's a genuinely, they're German. They speak German as a first language. That's not a problem. So I'm not saying you won't get work. I'm just saying, why would I need to hire you if I can find somebody who can actually do it naturally?
Sounds good. I'm gonna revise this question a little bit from Fernando, basically to say, do you audition for everything that you see?
No, 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 not even close.
Oh God, this is a good one. So Matthew, let me modify your question a little bit. And I ask it to Bill this way. So excuse me if I modify your question. If you were to get the blueprint yourself today, having never started in VO work, how long would it take you to become as successful you are, or let's just say to make $100,000 a year?
Well, 100,000, I could probably do that in 6 months with this program because I actually, by the end of my first 12 months, I was making $2,000 a week, which annualized is 100,000 a year. And I did that on my own. With this program, I could have cut that in half. I would have gotten to $400,000 way faster, way
Okay, and
faster.
Jennifer's asking, is there a demand for bilingual voiceover folks?
Yes, yes, yes. I always tell people, my friends who are bilingual, particularly Spanish and English, but all, French and, whatever language, but especially Spanish. I mean, I would love to be bilingual because you've just essentially doubled your market.
Yep. Okay. And so, what about the timing? A lot of places out there that we're not really all that excited about are convincing people that the first thing you need to do when you get into the voiceover business is spend a lot of money to get a demo done. True or false? Good idea or not?
Yeah, my personal philosophy is no. I mean, unless you've just got the money to spend and it's not a big deal, you're wealthy and it's not a big deal because a good demo is expensive. It's an investment. But today, unlike 10 years ago or 13 years ago when I started, there are platforms that you can be successful on and make money without a professional demo. And once you become successful on those platforms and you're generating income, use money you've already made instead of going in debt or spending money you don't have. Finance it out of your income you're already making would be my suggestion.
Now we have about 10 minutes left for some questions here, but again, what we want people to do if they feel this sounds good to them is to go to 3fred.com and schedule time to talk to me, and we'll see what your application says, and we'll walk you through it. Granita says, how do you know how much to charge for your work?
Well, actually, there's a whole course within the Voiceover Blueprint on how to set and negotiate prices. And so there is no standard pricing. That's the thing you have to understand. It's like the Wild West out there. And after a while, you'll get you figure out because you see so many job postings and you'll see what people are willing to pay. It's interesting. Let's say, you've got an explainer video, a corporate explainer video. Maybe it's 3 minutes long. There's some people who are willing to pay $50 for that. There's some people who are willing to pay $500 for that. What you get paid will typically have to do with your skill set and your experience. So when I first started off, when I got a $100 explainer video, I was thrilled. I mean, I was absolutely thrilled. And you can make some good money, at $100 a pop, as you can well imagine. But today, I'm closer to the $400 or $500 end of the spectrum. Not all the time. I've got some clients I've had for a long time. I do it for much less than that. But again, that really depends on your skill level and your experience and how well they like you. But part of doing this is learning how to negotiate your rates. And if you're not a negotiator, don't worry about it. I'm not either, but I've developed some strategies and techniques that will make it very easy for you.
Okay, and Brian asks, what if you're not good at voices? You're not just an announcer, but different. Can you use just your normal voice and still get lots of work?
Well, you and I can start a club because I don't do voices either. Even though I do character voices for video games, but it's like me being me. So hopefully you find that reassuring. So yes, absolutely. You being you is cool. That's what I do.
Okay, what about, this is a good question from Antonio. Are voiceover jobs more often single events or repeat business where you keep getting work from clients?
Yeah, it's both. You'll do a lot of one-offs for sure, but really, and one of the big business strategies that I preach is you have to treat your clients really well, because what you're looking for are those who will come back to you again, because there are a certain percentage of those clients who will come back to you and that's what you will build the base of your income on.
Okay, a couple more questions to finish up here. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I'm trying to get to as many as I can. I apologize.
That's
fine. Okay, so Michael's asking, does having a background, is a good question, as a TV anchor, person, or reporter make it harder or easier to transition into voiceover? Good.
Well, yeah, it's a double-edged sword. Obviously, there's something that you do very well, and I've worked with a number of broadcasters, and right now in my group I've got this anchor I was talking to you about from Nashville, and I've worked with her a lot, and now she's actually booking a lot of work. But you need to learn to be more than just an anchor, and that's your go-to, and that's what you know how to do. And so learning how to be the authentic you, that's going to be your big challenge, but you can do it. It can be done.
And Gary, good question here on the legal use of transcribed YouTube or iSpot TV videos. It's considered fair use as long as you're not trying to sell that work. You're using it for demonstration purposes, so there's no restrictions, although Bill and I are not lawyers, nor do we play them on TV.
I've been doing that for 13 years and have known hundreds, thousands of other people that have never had an issue.
And Wayne asks, I can quit the trucking job. I can't quit the trucking job cold turkey, but you do, by the way, Wayne, have a great place to record VO.
Inside a vehicle can be one of the best places to record.
Yeah, so can I build with the Blueprint program while still employed full time?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you have to budget your time.
Most do, don't they? I think most of our people probably.
By a landslide, yes.
What is the breakdown, Doug asks, of the type of work that you do? That's one we talk about quite a bit.
Yeah, I would say probably about 75% of all my work is corporate, because that's the market. It's mostly corporate. It's not commercial. I mean, there's commercial work, but that's not the bulk of what's out there. By corporate, I mean e-learning, tons of e-learning. Explainer videos where you're, explaining this, that, or the other, maybe for an internal audience or for vendors. Oh my gosh, that is the lion's share of the work out there. But in addition, I do TV promos, I do radio promos, I do quite a few commercials as well, and occasionally a video game.
And I don't want to end on Rick's question, so we'll make this the second to last. How do you take care of your voice? What if you get a cold or you get sick?
Yeah, I mean, it happens because I'm working all the time, or I'm working every day. So I try to get plenty of rest, drink plenty of fluids, but there is no, I got bronchitis a few weeks ago. And I actually, believe it or not, I kept recording, and my clients still like the work. So it's never really been a hindrance for me.
And yes, Andrea, we do have a payment plan for the program. Which pay to play is the best? I'm trying to see. Um,
Eh, that's hard to say. I mean, they both can work really well.
yeah, so as this is a final item, I'll ask Patrick's question, but I'll change it just a bit here. What do you think of all these conventions for voiceover artists, and how effective are they in getting you work?
Well, in terms of effective at getting you work, I would really question, but it depends on what your expectations are. If you want a social gathering where you can go make friends, hang out amongst your peers, I think that could be very cool. If you're going to learn something, make sure you research the person who's doing the teaching, make sure they actually know how they have success doing what they're teaching. But by and large, I think they're more social. The benefit is more social than anything else. But that's just my opinion.
Yep. Well, that's your opinion, and that'll be the final opinion, the final statement, because so you got to go. Thank you all for being here. We really appreciate your time, for taking the time out of your evening to be here.
Yes,
Bill, thank you
indeed.
very much.
Thank you.
We'll see you folks next time. Thanks.
All right.